We begin Immortal Reversal Episode 85 Plot Commentary. Wanglin's cultivation had finally recovered to the early Foundation establishment stage, and he was barely able to use the magic treasures in his storage bag. He had a plan in mind and was ready to quickly break through to the Jadon stage in order to break the secret of the seal. Afterwards, he rode the Mosquito Beast to leave Fire Cloud Walled City, and on the way he had to order the Mosquito Beast to slow down because it was too fast. He took out the map Jade Slip and carefully examined it, deciding to head to the Soul Refining Sect in the Vishnu Kingdom. The Soul Refining Sect was full of spiritual energy, and its unique peripheral disciple system attracted Wanglin, who could rent a cave to cultivate by simply paying a spirit stone, while the sect competition every 3 years was the only chance to become a core disciple. 7 days later, Wanglin arrived outside the Soul Refining Sect's mountain gate and felt the powerful barrier of the mountain protection array. Just as he was about to enter, a red-haired old man descended from the sky to talk to him briefly. After learning that Wanglin wanted to become a peripheral disciple, the old man initially refused, but made an exception and took him into the sect after seeing the precious flying sword Wanglin offered. On the way, the old man reminded Wanglin, "There are many prohibitions in the Soul Refining Sect, so you need to be careful." At a mountain peak cliff, the red-haired old man handed Wanglin over to a lazy middle-aged man, Chang Dawei. Chang Dawei arranged Cave D1090 for Wanglin and collected 2 medium-grade spirit stones as a 1-year usage fee. He told Wanglin, "Although there are few Foundation establishment stage cultivators among the peripheral disciples, they are not rare." He also mentioned the upcoming sect competition. This might be a chance to enter the core disciples. Meanwhile, on a cliff 50 miles away from the Soul Refining Sect, Lu Mei held the jade slip gifted by the Vermilion Bird ancestor and noticed that it was flickering with green aura. He surmised that Xingnu might be within the range of the Soul Refining Sect and gazed into the distance, whispering to himself, "Is it in the Soul Refining Sect?" In the eastern part of the Vermilion Bird star, a green light cut through the sky, swift as a shooting star. In the golden light was an old man, but it was not a physical body flying, rather, his Yuan Shen was out of body. His Yuan Shen was covered with 3 fist marks, golden aura overflowing, and appeared to be in a sorry state. This old man was none other than the old ancestor of the Troll clan. A few months ago, he was heavily injured by the Sun Sect's devil child, and he had no choice but to have his Yuan Shen go out of his body, roll up his storage bag and flee in a hurry, so he didn't even have time to care about Wanglin. However, that devil child followed him like a shadow, chasing him all the way, almost circling the Vermilion Bird star. The old ancestor was hit by the demon child several times, directly injuring his spirit, and if he hadn't practiced for many years and mastered the secret techniques of the Troll clan, I'm afraid he would have already fallen. In the end, he led the demonic child to the land of Xiaobei Yanji, and only with the help of a natural restriction was he able to escape from the pursuit. The weak old ancestor quickly returned to the Troll clan to act in a low profile. He left behind the life and death of the scolding tiger and other people, directly seized a clan member after the closed door to heal his wounds. As for Wanglin, he temporarily didn't dare to mess with him again, forcing the Vermilion Bird Nation to investigate. So he could only grit his teeth and give up. However, even though he didn't catch Wanglin this time, he accidentally obtained a strange flying sword. The old ancestor in seclusion opened his eyes, moving his newly seized body, and a somber color flashed in his eyes. He was clear that the seized body needed time to fuse before it could become a true physical body, and this process varied from person to person. Afterwards, he offered his flying sword and tapped the sword, and a miserable cry came out from within the sword, mixed with pleas for mercy. The soul of the sword appeared, and the old ancestor bowed his head, only to see black mist gushing out to transform into Shu Liguo. Xu Liguo immediately begged for forgiveness when he saw the old ancestor, pleading for mercy, not forgetting to denigrate Wanglin. The old ancestor laughed at the words and sighed that this sword soul is quite interesting and even knows how to avoid harm. Xu Liguo hurriedly kissed his ass, claimed loyalty, and swore that he would never betray the old ancestor. However, the old man secretly cast a seal, but found that Xu Liguo did not show signs of being sealed, but only wailed in pain. The old ancestor was puzzled, but did not move. He originally wanted to wear out the sword soul and sacrifice it separately, but Xu Liguo's unique divine intelligence made him change his mind. Sword souls with divine intelligence were extremely rare, and if they were utilized, they might be able to play a miraculous role in battle. He didn't know that Xu Liguo himself was a devil, and the so-called poisonous oath was even a hint of expectation for him. In the end, the old ancestor put Xu Liguo back into the flying sword, putting it away in a precious manner. The more he looked at the sword, the more amazed he felt, secretly speculating that it was definitely not extraordinary. On the other hand, Wanglin came to the soul refining sect and found the cave of number 1090. Although the cave is simple, it is full of spiritual energy, far better than the spirit stone water pool in the fire cloud walled city. He Saturday down on a stone bed and began to cultivate. 3 days later, he felt that the progress was slow, so he took out 3 pieces of top-quality spirit stones to set up a band to concentrate the spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in the cave suddenly skyrocketed, forming an airtight spiritual space, and Wanglin became the only outlet for absorption. A month later, Wanglin opened his eyes, and his cultivation broke through from the early stage of foundation establishment to the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment, just 1 step away from the late stage of foundation establishment. However, he also realized that the extreme spirit stones were consumed too quickly, and there were only 15 left in his storage bag, which was far from enough to support subsequent cultivation. At the same time, the cave was too dense in spiritual energy, and cracks appeared on the walls and stone bed, which were temporarily repaired by Wanglin, but could not be used for a long time. He decided to replace the cave. When he walked out the door, it was dusk, and the light of the setting sun covered the land. This day is the last day of the old year. Wanglin stood outside the cave with a lot of emotions, from the peak of the fall into the mortal world. He clenched his teeth and insisted all the way, and finally survived the toughest moments. He whispered softly to himself, his gaze complex and determined. The arrival of the new year symbolizes a new beginning and infinite possibilities. Right at this moment, a familiar woman's figure slowly flew in the sunset in the distance. Wanglin's gaze condensed and doubts rose in his heart. This person looks somewhat familiar. He gazed and observed. His eyes swept over the woman's figure in the setting sun, only to see her drifting away into the soul-refining sect's mountain gate. After gazing for a moment, his heart stirred, and he felt that this person looked somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall where he had seen her before. Afterward, Wanglin's body moved and drifted down from the mountain peak, and soon came to the mountainside to see the middle-aged man who had been spitting on his knees. The middle-aged man noticed Wanglin's arrival, opened his eyes, and casually glanced at him, but instantly condensed his gaze and said in surprise, "Huh, you're in the middle stage of foundation establishment." Wanglin secretly sighed. He couldn't hide his cultivation after his yuan-shen collapsed, making it easy for the other party to see what was going on. In his heart, he said, "We must recover our yuan-shen as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be endless consequences." However, on the surface, he respectfully explained, "My disciple's breakthrough was imminent, so I borrowed the spiritual energy of this place to exhale, and by a fluke, I managed to reach the middle stage of foundation establishment." Although the middle-aged man was not suspicious, he was quite surprised by Wanglin's cultivation speed and secretly made a note of this. He then asked, "What is your business here?" Wanglin requested to change to a cave with more sufficient spiritual energy. The middle-aged man was slightly displeased and warned him, "Cultivators should not be greedy for speed. Otherwise, it will be difficult to form a Dan with an unstable Tao foundation." Wanglin remained silent for a moment and insisted on his request. Seeing this, the middle-aged man suggested that he needed to pay an extra middle-grade spirit stone. Although Wanglin's heart ached, he handed over the spirit stone and handed over the token. After the middle-aged man replaced the token, he handed the new token to Wanglin and reminded him, "The smaller the room number, the more spirit power." Wanglin took it and saw that it said 803, then thanked him and left. After Wanglin left, the middle-aged man's gaze flickered and he said to himself, "Odd." Then he turned into a long rainbow and went straight to the 1090 cave. He carefully explored the cave but didn't find anything unusual. So he was puzzled in his heart and eventually secretly speculated Wanglin's breakthrough might just be a coincidence, but decided to pay more attention in the future. Wanglin flew up the mountain peak to find the 803 cave. Although the cave was similar in size to the 1090 style, there was a complex spirit gathering formation arranged on the ground. Wanglin observed it for a moment and realized that it was a simple spirit gathering formation with many extra structures added just to hide it from the public. The spirit gathering formation was connected to a spiritual vein through a tailed spiritual eye, providing the cave with rich spiritual energy. This pseudo-spirit eye was not as good as a real spirit eye, but it still greatly increased the concentration of spirit energy. Wanglin restored the formation to its original state, sat it down on his knees, placed a restriction on the cave wall, and took out 3 top-quality spirit stones to start exhaling and practicing. The dense spiritual energy quickly filled the cave and even condensed into a light blue spiritual frost that covered the ground and Wanglin's entire body. He was immersed in cultivation, and the spiritual energy in his body slowly converged. However, the meaning of T and the seal became more and more solid. 2 months later, Wanglin had stepped into the late stage of foundation establishment, but there was still a gap between him and the Great Circle. After the 3 top-quality spirit stones were depleted, he decided to rely less on this method of cultivation. On this day, Wanglin's eyes opened and his gaze fell on the formation on the ground. He dispersed the formation, revealing the complex small formation hidden within it, speculating that this formation directly extracted spiritual energy through the tail spirit eye, or it could fulfill the needs for conjugation. Wanglin began to study the formation in depth and tried to crack it with his superb attainments in forbidden systems. The residual shadows of his hands choking the formation flew, and he finally managed to fuse and break the formation. After the formation stopped, a fist-sized red spirit stone was revealed, which was the Cringen rock. At this moment, although the spirit stone is unable to store spiritual energy, it can be absorbed. Wanglin pressed down on the spirit stone and directly absorbed the majestic spiritual energy of the tailed spirit bird. Spiritual energy surged into his body. The pores of his body opened up and black gas was discharged, and the scars on his face gradually faded. Wanglin was ecstatic in his heart. I didn't realize that the spirit power of the tailed spirit eye had such a strange effect. However, he understood that this effect was only most significant when used for the first time. Abandoning distracting thoughts, he devoted himself to cultivation. His spiritual energy stabilized, and his cultivation speed increased dramatically. The spiritual energy within the 803 cave was thick enough to make a Yanjing cultivator's heart flutter. Wanglin immersed himself in it, steadily accumulating his cultivation and moving towards a higher realm. Meanwhile, deep within the ice and snow divine hall, Li Wanfeng sat cross-legged, with 5 huge pieces of multicolored ice in front of him. These ice cubes emitted immortal qi, if anything for him to absorb. and within them were thumb-sized immortal jades that performed strange changes with the help of formations. However, although Li Yuanfeng did not appear to be in a sorry state, his face was pale and depressed. After a long time, he opened his eyes and muttered to himself with palpitations. The immortal power contained in that thunder, weakened by 50%, still made me injured. It turned out that he had taken advantage of Sun Tai's battle with the old ancestor of the giant demon race to attack Wanglin, but he was chased by an immortal thunder from Sun Tai and escaped only after 1,000 years of hard work. Although Li Yuanfeng had been forcibly raised to the early stage of infant transformation due to a secret technique, he had been unable to break through for the rest of his life, and his cultivation was far inferior to the infant transformation cultivators who had broken through on their own. So naturally, it was difficult for him to resist Sun Tai's immortal thunder in the face of Sun Tai's thunder. He laughed coldly. That Zhengyu doesn't know if he's dead or not, but is my T's realm of intent that easy to crack? He then fell into deep thought, wondering why the old ancestor of the troll clan insisted on leaving the corpse behind, never being able to guess the reason. At the soul-refining mountain within Vishnu, Wanglin awoke from his seclusion, and his cultivation had reached the great circle of the late stage of foundation establishment. He absorbed the spiritual energy inside and outside his cave, and the scars on his face faded slightly, but were still hideous. He judged that the pseudo-spiritual eyes could no longer fulfill his cultivation needs and decided to look for a place where the spiritual rock was denser. After covering his spiritual eyes, he stepped out of the cave to feel the spring in the mountain breeze. Right at this moment, Wanglin noticed a woman walking out of the cave not far away, dressed in light blue gauze with a dusty temperament and elegant appearance. She lightly smiled in response to Wanglin and then turned to leave. Wanglin frowned and whispered, "This woman looks somewhat familiar, but I'm sure I haven't seen her before." Without paying much attention, he turned around and headed to the target cave. Wanglin found cave residence number 743 and judged that it was close to where Spirit Rock was. However, he sensed that there was someone inside the cave and was about to leave when a middle-aged man in the middle of the mountain peak came out and called out to him. The middle-aged man realized that Wanglin's cultivation had skyrocketed, quickly reaching the late stage of the grand round from the early stage of foundation establishment. Inwardly, he was shocked and secretly guessed that he was carrying a heaven-defying magic treasure or a mysterious technique. The middle-aged man tentatively talked to Wanglin and hinted, if Wanglin forms a dan here, his chances of becoming an inner disciple in the future grand competition will greatly increase. Wanglin smiled in response, but mentioned that the current cave was lacking in spiritual energy and said that he wanted to switch to cave 743. The middle-aged man was in a difficult position, but eventually agreed to help coordinate. The big man in the cave was unwilling to move out and asked for medium-grade spirit stones before returning to the cave. On the surface, the middle-aged man promised to make other arrangements for the next day, but in his heart he was already greedy for Wanglin. That night, the middle-aged man quietly sneaked into Wanglin's cave with the intention of seizing his cultivation things. He saw that the cave's sky crane was not completely closed, although he felt strange, but he thought that his high level of cultivation did not put the late foundation establishment stage Wanglin in his eyes, and directly broke into the cave. However, his greed and gullibility were destined to pay the price. The moment he entered the cave, the middle-aged man saw Wanglin sitting cross-legged, and the latter's gaze was calmly watching him. The man's gaze flickered, his right hand choked, and green light silently appeared and went straight to Wanglin. He did not intend to kill the other party directly, but wanted to capture and then torture the killer. Wanglin laughed coldly. His storage bag slapped the mirror streamer in his hand. The mirror gas whistled out and instantly crushed the green light. The man coldly snorted and offered a 3-inch flying sword, trying to suppress Wanglin with the power of the Golden Dan refined flying sword. However, the flying sword instantly broke under the impact of the energy, and the man's smile frownsy on his face. Wanglin said blandly, "When Mr. Wang was cultivating, you were not yet born." The man turned around with a pale face and spurted blood to escape, but he was bound by the powerful qi and dragged back to his original spot. Wanglin slapped the man in the air, and he screamed miserably, the right side of his face bulging high, spitting out blood and breaking his teeth. The man tried to identify himself but was hit again. His heart was a mix of horror and humiliation. He crazily drank low and tried to explode his Rindan. However, Wanglin's mirror streamer shook, and the mirror gas drilled into the man's body and extracted the Jindan from his body. Then he swallowed it in one gulp. The man's spiritual energy was dispersed, and he weakly questioned, Who are you?" But he was met with a cold response, "You don't deserve to know." Wanglin pointed out a finger, and the man lost his vitality and turned into flying ash. After leaving the cave, Wanglin went straight to cave 743 and cast a ban to enter the cave. The big man in the cave was shocked and then angry. But then he was knocked unconscious by Wanglin's point. Wanglin ignored the other party. His eyes fell on the wall, and his flying sword cut open the channel to reveal the spirit vein mine. He placed a restriction to go deeper into the vein, and the spiritual energy was as thick as a pressure that covered his entire body. Under the pressure of spiritual power, Wanglin used a top-quality spirit stone to expose himself to raise the pressure. The Yan Shen fragment gradually converged, and his cultivation quickly broke through, from the late stage of foundation establishment to the peak of the middle stage of Wanying. The spirit vein quickly dried up in the crazy surge of spirit energy, and the entire mountain peak turned into a waste vein. The outer disciples were shocked to realize that the spiritual energy had disappeared and fled the cave, while Wanglin instantly moved out from the bottom of the peak and stood outside the mountain, causing the crowd to be amazed. As soon as that mangy man lifted the ban, he panicked and was incredibly respectful to Wanglin. A stunningly beautiful woman in the distance nodded her head slightly to Wanglin. Wanglin coldly swept his eyes and had no time to pay attention. At this moment, he senses the experience of going from life to death. The Yuan Shen is initially collected, the intention is available, and his cultivation has recovered significantly. The mountain peak inversion caught the attention of the inner gate of the soul refining sect, and 3 people then flew out. One of them, a white-haired old man, majestically droned, "All shut up." The surrounding area was instantly silent. The old man asked in a stern voice, "Where is Liu Fuling?" No one responded. He frowned slightly and flew into the depths of the mountain peak with his 2 companions. Liu Fuling was the middle-aged man who had previously started the incident due to greed. The 3 old men were inner disciples of the soul refining sect and also served as peripheral deacons. Wanglin's eyes flickered as he secretly observed, of the 3, the old man's cultivation reached the early stage of Yanjing, and the remaining 2 were all in the late stage of Jiedan. A few moments later, the old man flew out alone. His face was gloomy. His eyes were mixed with doubt and shock. He found that the spiritual veins of the mountain peaks had completely dried up, and the spiritual ore was shattered at the touch of it, so it was obvious that the spiritual power had been instantly sucked out. This kind of weird phenomenon has never happened since the opening of the soul refining sect. The old man ordered the peripheral disciples to cultivate in situ and not to leave without authorization, and then sacrificed a jade sword to fly into the inner door of the soul refining sect to ask for help. All the disciples show more than the color of surprise, only Wanglin sitting on his knees above the tree to exhale breath, calm and collected. The old man's eyes swept through the crowd but did not stop at Wanglin, thinking that he was just a late foundation establishment cultivator who was insignificant. However, Wanglin's Yuan Shen had recovered slightly, so no one could see through his true cultivation unless he was a god transformation stage cultivator. Soon, more than a dozen sword lights flew out from the inner gate of the soul refining sect, and more than a dozen people descended. 5 of them had already reached the Yuanjing stage realm, and the rest of them had the weakest cultivation of the middle Jedan stage. The middle-aged man at the head had a cultivation as high as the late Yuanjing stage, and his gloomy and cold aura was entwined around him, as if countless grievous souls were hovering around, making him intimidating to look at. He coldly asked the old man about the situation, and the old man respectfully reported about the destruction of the mountain peak spirit vein, and speculated that it was related to the peripheral disciples. When Wen heard this, he immediately ordered blockade the surrounding area and kill anyone who moves. He then flew back to the inner sect with the old man. When he met with Patriarch Wanglin, he looked as usual and secretly weighed the pros and cons, although he had a mosquito beast to help escape. But he was not willing to easily give up the cultivation resources here. The heavenly reversal bead still could not be taken out, and he decided to wait and see what would happen. As the day dawned, the middle-aged scribe led 9 red-robed cultivators to reappear. These red-robed cultivators were surrounded by unjust souls, emitting a purple-black devil flame-like aura. Wen ordered the thousands of peripheral disciples to be divided into 10 groups, with each person being responsible for a group to inspect them one by one. The red-robed cultivators cast a red gas to cover the disciples, forcing them to check in groups. The process does not ask questions, and only use their fingers to point at the center of their eyebrows to probe their memories. Wanglin was placed in the 3rd group. The surface is calm and no difference. During the inspection process, a Green Mountain cultivator tried to escape but was easily captured back by the red-robe cultivator. Another dozens of disciples, because of the harboring of evil intentions, was pulled out and thrown into the open space. After the red-robed cultivator in charge of the 3rd group clicked Wanglin's eyebrow, he turned around and left without finding any abnormalities. Wanglin secretly sighed in relief and continued his disguise. In the end, more than 100 of the thousands of peripheral disciples were left in the clearing waiting to be disposed of, and those who passed the inspection were arranged to cultivate on other peaks. Wanglin was assigned to a shorter peak and entered the cave alone. He sat on his knees and secretly pondered. Although spirit vein absorption can quickly restore cultivation, it is extremely risky and easily attracts the attention of spirit transformation or higher realm cultivators. Wanglin speculated that there was a main vein in the inner gate of the soul refining sect, so if he could find an opportunity to absorb it, he would be able to completely recover his cultivation. He decided to temporarily hibernate and wait for an opportunity to move, and if necessary, he would not hesitate to use the star compass to tear through the void to escape. June was the best opportunity for peripheral disciples of the soul refining sect to step into the inner sect. It was rumored that the soul refining sect possessed a soul streamer that was the most valuable treasure of the sect, condensing more than 100 million souls and changing the color of heaven and earth with the movement of the streamer, which could be called the top treasure on the Vermilion Bird planet. In addition, the soul refining sect uses the refining of soul streamers as its core technique, and although Vermilion Bird star cultivators are mostly proficient in the art of alchemy, they are still not as good as the soul refining sect. If you can master this path and refine streamers with wandering souls, their power may be comparable to a forbidden streamer. Wanglin woke up from his seclusion and his cultivation had recovered to the middle stage of Yanjing. He took out a piece of immortal jade with a missing corner and broke off a piece and took it to forcefully impact the seal. Intense pain hit him, but he bore it silently. Meanwhile, in a springtime valley in Chuvru, rode on a black-striped tiger, Little White, with a crisp laugh. Little White's face was full of helplessness, and his heart was filled with sadness as he recalled the year of being tortured by this little witch. Tai Yan Saturday cross-legged under the pagoda, looking kindly at Chou Ru, his heart firmly believing benefactor Wanglin will be able to turn the danger into a success. On the other side, Thunderfrog lazily basked in the sun, recalling the years of fighting in the land of the ancient gods and how Wanglin had brought him away. What he missed more was the mosquito. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, June arrived. This was the day of the soul-refining sect's outer disciple competition, where 10,000 disciples would only choose one person to become an inner disciple. Wanglin opened his eyes and got up. His eyes shone like stars, and there were only 8 T-marks left on his face. The seals had contracted, but they hadn't been completely lifted. He sensed the meaning of life and death in the reincarnation heavenly Tao and realized the complex relationship between life and death, and his many experiences of life and death had changed his mindset, and he vaguely sensed the opportunity to break through to the late stage of transformation of the spirit, but he still needed to find the key point. Wanglin walked out of the cave as the mountain wind blew by. He recalled the power of Li Yuanfang's infant transformation stage intention and lamented the limitations of the Hierophant stage intention. He thought of the scripture of asking for the tripods gifted by his seniors in the Immortal realm and secretly sighed. The asking for the tripod stage is out of reach. Currently, there is no hope for an infant transformation before the seal is lifted, and it's difficult to rival the powerhouses on the heavenly fortune star in terms of cultivation. Suddenly, Wanglin noticed a woman watching him from afar. His figure flashed to the cave where the woman was, and the woman, who called herself Willow Eyebrows, mentioned the past and tried to jog Wanglin's memory. However, Wanglin responded indifferently. "Don't recognize." Willow Eyebrows sighed lightly and revealed between smiles, "I am a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Kingdom." However, Wanglin had already seen through the bracelet she was wearing and sneered. "Your bracelet. I've seen it on Red Butterfly." Saying this, he drifted away. Lu Mei looked at Wanglin's back and whispered, "I haven't seen him for 500 years. He's no longer the teenager he was back then. He's now as firm as iron. Just what exactly is his Tao heart?" Wanglin's Tao heart was so deep and unfathomable that no one was able to peek into it except for himself. Facing Lu Mei's appearance, his heart was gloomy and uneasy. He felt that the Vermilion Bird Kingdom was like a huge invisible mountain looming over the Vermilion Bird Star, and the oppression was everywhere. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more pronounced this oppression became. Although the alienation of the Vermilion Bird Kingdom was short-lived, that invisible sense of crisis was deeply embedded in Wanglin's memory, like a black curtain that shrouds the sky and the earth, and the only way to free it is for a sharp sword to break through the curtain. And in Wanglin's eyes, this new overlord of the Vermilion Bird Star had already lost its vitality and was heading for the end. 2 days later, the soul-refining sect's outer disciple competition officially began. Tens of thousands of disciples participated in it, both casual cultivators and people from cultivation families. The rules of the competition are extremely cruel. As long as you win, you can live or die. And even rumor has it that the more people you kill, the more likely you are to enter the inner door. Less than half of the disciples survive each competition, and the souls of the dead are absorbed by the soul-refining sect's soul streamer, becoming the foundation of the sect's growth. Wanglin realized from his observation that the battlefield platform would absorb the soul of every dead disciple. Finally, he had his first battle. The opponent was a short, fat cultivator in the late foundation establishment stage, and the opponent attacked with a fireball spell, but Wanglin made the opponent fall to the ground unconscious with just a wave of his hand. He didn't kill anyone, thinking that it would be beneath his dignity to kill a foundation establishment cultivator. As the grand competition progressed, only 100 disciples out of the tens of thousands were left after 7 days, with most dying in battle and a few choosing to give up or lose both. During this period, 4 disciples caught the attention of the soul-refining sect. The first one was a gray-haired old man with late-stage Jadan cultivation who killed his opponents all the way with his death spell technique. The second person was a teenager with early Jadan stage who predicted enemy spells in advance with his keen intuition of spiritual power fluctuations. The third person was the familiar 743 Cave Mangan, who relied on a talisman paper spell to kill countless people. The fourth person was Wanglin, who had deliberately attracted enough attention by winning without killing anyone. After another 7 days, the remaining 100 people were once again eliminated, and in the end, there were only 4 people left. The very same 4 people who had been noticed before. When Wanglin faced off against the 743 Cave Mangan, the other party directly conceded defeat and stepped down from the stage due to the prohibitions in his body, while the gray-haired old man easily defeated the teenager with his death spell technique, and the teenager was saved by the soul-refining sect's spiritual light, as he was on the verge of death. In the end, only Wanglin and the gray-haired old man were left in the outer disciple competition, and their duel unfolded the next day. Sima had been practicing the death curse technique for many years in order to win today. After becoming an inner disciple, he believed that he could break through the robbing cause. His master teacher had once said, "The death spell art was created to mimic the extreme realm, and if practiced to the extreme, it can even touch a hint of the extreme realm's might." The duel began. Sima's gaze was grim as he pointed a finger with his right hand and drank lowly. Day. The power of the death spell art surged towards Wanglin like a tidal wave. The battle was imminent. The death spell art was a divine ability created by ancient cultivators to imitate the extreme realm. Although it was not as powerful as the extreme realm, it could be mastered. Once cultivated, the word death is all that is needed to instantly kill the target. However, this art is extremely difficult to cultivate and requires the collection of 3 Canely, Death Qi Qing, and Killing Qi. The deadly Qi comes from the bones of a corpse, the Yen Qi comes from the female Yin, and the Killing Qi requires the experience of life and death combat. After the fusion of the 3 Qi, the cultivator needs to undergo 9 deaths and 1 life of refinement. Even after practicing the death mantra, one still has to endure severe pain and face life and death tests every 3 years. Due to the extremely high risk of cultivation, this art was gradually abandoned. Sima performed the death mantra technique using the word death as a guide, and the void ripples attacked Wanglin. However, with just a thought, Wanglin solidified and dissolved the strange power of the death mantra technique. The backlash caused Sama to fall to the ground with serious injuries and was retrieved by the sect's aura. Wanglin won easily and won the grand competition in one fell swoop. After the match, inner disciple Wang Jin led Wanglin into the inner gate of the soul-refining sect. The inner gate called itself the 3 giant peaks of heaven and earth, which were where the soul-refining, prana-drawing, and god-locking sects were located, and the 9 golden rings were the places of retreat for the 9 spirit transformation cultivators. When Wang Jin introduced the sect to Wanglin, he mentioned, "There was once a god transformation cultivator who died at the hands of Zhenyu, and Zhenyu was precisely Wanglin's pseudonym." In response, although Wanglin didn't comment on the surface, he was vaguely suspicious in his heart. After entering the hall of soul-refining peak, Wanglin met the Grand Elder who was in the late Yanjing stage. After testing his cultivation, the Great Elder was quite satisfied and allowed him to freely cultivate within the soul-refining peak and told him, "There is no master-disciple system within the clan, so you need to comprehend the techniques on your own." Subsequently, Wanglin received his disciple's clothing and token, and went to the scripture cabinet to select a technique. Inside the main hall, 2 powerful divine senses talked to the Grand Elder, mentioning the complex internal situation of the soul-refining sect. Although the Grand Elder had reservations about Wanglin, he didn't stop him from joining. Wanglin secretly observed and realized that the soul-refining sect was currently controlled by 3 late Yanjing cultivators, while the God-realizing cultivators were all in seclusion. He had a calculation in his mind and decided to continue to keep a low profile and wait for the right time. The soul-refining peak scripture pavilion only had 3 floors and was plain in appearance. Wanglin stepped into it and found a dry and thin old man sitting inside the pavilion. This person's cultivation was close to Yanjing, only by a hair. The old man's face was yellow, and he lazily raised his eyes to confirm the token before informing. In addition to the 3rd floor being off-limits, the rest of the place can be flipped through at will, for a limited time of 3 days. Wanglin first entered the 1st floor and found that there were many different types of techniques, but no methods for refining soul streamers. He then came to the 2nd floor, where there were fewer jade shorts scattered around. One of the jade slips labeled Soul Streamer Making caught his attention. However, Wanglin realized that its content was not different from the common refining methods in the outside world, which was obviously not enough to support the soul refining sect's reputation. Failing to find the complete method, he turned his attention to the 3rd floor and returned to the 1st floor to ask the old man, "Why is it forbidden to enter the 3rd floor?" The old man responded impatiently, "If you can't go on it, you can't go on it." Seeing Wanglin's cold gaze, the old man taunted, "If you want the complete Soul Streamer production jade slip, go grab it." He also pointed to a cave, suggesting that there might be something needed there. Wanglin smiled faintly and then shot out and grabbed the old man and smashed him hard against the stone wall. The old man begged for forgiveness and eventually admitted, "Wanglin is strong, so I suggest going directly to snatch it." Wanglin turned away without responding and went straight to the cave. There was a prohibition on the outside of the cave mansion, but it instantly collapsed under Wanglin's attack. The owner of the cave, a late-stage Jadin cultivator, was furious and offered a soul streamer to summon hundreds of souls to attack Wanglin. These spirits had extraordinary power, and there were even a few that emitted the pressure of a Jadin cultivator. Obviously, the soul streamer had the magical ability to make the souls grow. Wanglin easily grabbed the soul streamer and erased the other party's divine sense, refining it. The soul was then sucked into the streamer, and the owner of the cave was shocked and hastily admitted to handing over the black jade slip and all the items in the cave. Even the untouched concubines were also offered to ask for mercy. Wanglin did not kill him, but took the jade slip to check, and found that this is the real soul-refining sect soul streamer art, but there are still flaws. At this time, the 2 female cultivators in the cave came out and called themselves Xu Yun and Senior Sister, explaining, "The soul-refining sect's soul streamer production method is divided into 3 parts, refining the soul, extracting the prana, and locking up the god, and the combination of all 3 is what makes it complete." Wanglin turned away without responding. The 2 women decided to follow, but they were chased back by Wanglin's cold voice, "Take half a step closer and die." In the end, Wanglin chose a place below Soul Refining Peak that was close to a spiritual vein to open a cave. After entering the cave, he went deeper into the spiritual vein and found that the depths of the spiritual vein were shrouded in black mist. The spiritual energy was constantly absorbed, and his divine sense couldn't penetrate. The black fog vaguely came from the miserable screams, revealing the figure of the soul. Noticing that there was a restriction on the periphery of the black fog, Wanglin's complexion suddenly changed, recognizing that this was actually an ancient soul mirror, a rare ancient restriction that used the soul as a mirror and was unpredictable. He appeared next to the ancient soul mirror, and in the rolling black fog, 2 ghostly lights suddenly lit up, and a roar that shook the Yuan Shen came out. "Retreat." Wanglin stepped back with a heavy gaze, speculating that there must be treasures here. He strangled and cast a spell, and the remnants of the prohibition rushed into the black fog like a long dragon, triggering an even stronger roar. The black fog quickly coalesced and transformed into a demonic beast with 2 horns and black fog all over its body. Guarding a small golden flag stuck on the ground, the black mist was coming from within it. The beast pounced on Wanglin, who instantly dodged to confirm that the beast was not a Killen, but one of the souls in the Soul Refining Sect's soul streamers, and its strength was equivalent to the early stage of God transformation. Wanglin did not intend to take in this beast for the time being, but instead, he was on his knees cultivating and thinking about the connection between the Soul Refining Sect's soul streamer and the ancient soul mirror. As time passed, Wanglin's cave looked brand new, and Xuyun and Lu Wei, 2 women, had carefully decorated the place and gained a lot of money from publicizing Wanglin's reputation. However, Xuyun was worried that this would lead to trouble. One day, an early Renjing cultivator, Zhuo Dongjian, visited the place claiming to be looking for Wanglin, as Xuyun and Lu Wei falsely claimed. "We are Wanglin's concubines." They were rebuked by Guodongyan, who said, "How dare you call yourself a concubine even though you're a mere foundation cultivator?" and forcibly tried to explore the cave. Duo Dongjian cast a spell to turn a green dragon to attack the cave, but was countered by the prohibition. Wanglin appeared, and the black gas behind him condensed into a giant skull that shocked the entire scene. Facing Guodongyan, Wanglin said bluntly, "Hand over the soul streamer." Duo Dongjian unwillingly offered his soul streamer and summoned numerous souls, which even included a 2-horned soul that emitted the aura of a Yuanjing. Wanglin executed his divine ability and instantly absorbed most of the souls, although some of them broke free and fled, still being forcefully recaptured by him. Wanglin questioned, "Where did the Yuanjing living souls come from?" Zhuo Dongjian helplessly informs, "With 900 souls of the 100-soul streamer, I exchanged it from Sujin's place at the Prana Drawing Peak." Dongjian sighed in admiration. "You cultivated Soul Spin in 3 months, the 3rd successor of Soul Refining Peak." After completely giving up his resistance, Wanglin raised his cultivation with the help of the spirit vein pressure during the 3 months of spitting cultivation, breaking through the Yanjing realm, only waiting for his Yanshen to recover to return to the realm of transformation spirit. There were only 3 T marks left on his face, and Sun Tai's seal was on the verge of collapsing. By studying the soul refining jade slip, Wanglin gradually grasped the 3 main methods of the soul streamer: soul refining, refining dead things and sealing them within the soul streamer to make them grow; soul extraction, extracting raw souls from the living to manipulate them; and God-locking the mysteries were not fully penetrated. Soul streamers are divided into 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 soul streamers according to the number of souls. 1,000 soul streamers require the support of the main soul, and its strength determines the power of the soul streamer. Wanglin speculated that the unicorn-like demonic beast deep within the spirit vein was the main soul of the golden soul streamer. Within 3 months, he had repeatedly fought with the soul streamer in the depths of the spirit vein for souls, and with his dexterity, he had managed to obtain 90% of them, including an early-stage Yen-Ying soul, which formed a strong foundation for the main soul's soul-refining peak. Wanglin lightly waved his right hand, the soul spin instantly dissipated, and a soul streamer appeared in his palm out of nowhere. With a gentle dance, countless souls were sucked into it. Dongjian's face suddenly changed, transmitting a trace of bitterness. The soul streamer that was painstakingly collected over the years was actually taken away. He sighed darkly. The only thing he could do was laugh bitterly. This was the iron law of the soul refining sect. He had come here to snatch Wanglin's soul streamer, and now that he had failed, although he was upset, he could only accept it helplessly. Cupping his fist at Wanglin, Zhuo Dongjian sadly left. Wanglin integrated the Yanjing soul into the soul streamer and started a fierce battle with the original master soul. In the black mist, The two demonic beasts' shadows tore and entangled, and only the winner could control the soul streamer. At this time, Exyun and Lu Wei requested to stay because they coveted the safety of the cave, but Wanlin indifferently refused. Just as he was about to expel the two, a green shadow floated up to him, and it was Liu Mei. She revealed ominous words between her smiles. "Wanglin, your great calamity is coming. Quickly leave the Vermilion Bird Star," Willow Eyebrows confessed. Master is Vermilion Bird Star's #1 person, Vermilion Bird Z, and mentioned Red Butterfly has been killed by his senior brother. Wanlin instantly understood that his battle with Red Butterfly was nothing more than a beast fight in the eyes of others. Lu Mei let out a deep sigh and said bluntly, "My mission is to make the Dao heart leave your mark. The 1,000 illusions emotionless Dao you cultivate causes the heart to be emotionless, but the surface is full of emotion." She left with a complicated expression, but concealed it extremely deeply. Wanglin watched Willow Eyebrows leave in the distance, his mind churning with thoughts as he sensed that even though Willow Eyebrows had emotion on the surface, she was actually hiding the true emotionless Dao within her heart. Afterward, he moved the unconscious Xu Yun and Li Wei to 100 feet away from the cave. It was at this moment that he suddenly noticed the strong contrast between the two men's expressions. The qualities of outer rigidity and inner softness versus outer softness and inner rigidity enlightened him. He coldly smiled as he looked in the direction where Willow Eyebrows had disappeared. "Finally, I understand. The source of that strange feeling. All of Willow Eyebrows' emotional displays were merely to hide the heartless nature within." With his gaze coldly gazing into the distance, Wanglin was alarmed. "Willow Eyebrows' cultivation is unfathomable and far beyond me. If not, how could he become Vermilion Bird's disciple? However, his purpose for approaching him was still confusing." After thinking a little, Wanglin returned to his cave and Saturday down on his knees, deciding to focus on restoring his Yuan Shen. Yan Shen restoration needed the assistance of a stronger spiritual pressure, so he flashed to the depths of the spirit vein of soul refining peak. Spiritual pressure converged around him, so he closed his eyes and concentrated on borrowing the spiritual pressure to squeeze his Yan Shen and accelerate his recovery. Time passed quietly. Zhu Yun and Liu Wei woke up and realized that they hadn't been moved out of the scope of the cave, so they built a small cave to cultivate in the same place. One day, Wanglin suddenly opened his eyes when he was fully recovering his Yuan Shen and felt that his Yuan Shen had significantly improved and there were only 2 T-marks left on his face. He swept his divine sense to the Golden Soul streamer 300 feet away and found a shadow appearing, triggering the Kirin Beast's roar within the soul streamer. The silhouette was none other than Soul Refining Peak Grand Elder Wu Daoqi. Wu Daoqi attempted to refine the soul streamer, but was suppressed by the demonic beast. He sacrificed his 10,000 soul streamer and fought fiercely with the demonic beast, using the technique of blood sacrifice to enhance his soul's power. However, the demonic beast summoned a second Shilen with its golden soul streamer, causing Wu Daoqi to fall into a predicament. Even after using the God-locking streamer spirit borrowed from the God-locking peak to trap the 2 demonic beasts, the golden soul streamer still surged with black aura, and a third Kilin appeared. Wu Daoqi couldn't win and was about to give up when a powerful divine sense descended on him, making him unable to resist. Wanglin appeared and easily suppressed the 3 griffin demonic beasts and used the black qi to condense the spear to crush them. After the Kirin collapsed, an even more powerful golden aura surged within the golden soul streamer, and all the souls merged into it, coalescing into a solid Kirin that emitted a golden aura. Wu Daoqi was seriously injured and fell unconscious due to the force of the recoil, and Wanglin took away his soul streamer and God-locking streamer. Gazing at the golden ceiling, he realized, this is the true main soul of the golden soul streamer. The previous demonic beast was merely an attached soul. The golden Sealand's entire body emitted golden light, and its might was amazing as it confronted Wanglin in the depths of the soul-refining peak, with the atmosphere of swords drawn. In the depths of soul-refining peak, Wanglin encountered a golden griffin residual soul. The appearance of this clan is almost identical to the Qilin of the Immortal world's Marquis Ling Tian, only the color is different. But the breath is far less powerful than the Marquis Ling Tian's Qilin. Wanglin recognized that this was the remnant soul of a Qilin. Although it was not as strong as a living creature, it retained its inherited memories and was able to cast spells. The Qilin was the first to attack, condensing a golden ball of light and smashing it at Wanglin. Wanglin summoned a black spear to meet the attack, and under the collision of the two sides, the light mass turned into a golden aura and dissipated. Wanglin observed and realized, although this remnant soul is weaker than a living creature, it still poses a certain threat due to the existence of inherited memories. He then took out two bells and tried to seal the Qilin. However, the Qilin violently stepped on the ground and shattered the surrounding spiritual veins, forcing the bells to interrupt their attack. Wanglin snorted coldly, and the lance in his hand turned into a black aura that pierced through the Qilin. The remnant soul released a large number of souls, but these souls were sucked back into the Qilin's body. The two sides were caught in a fight for the souls, and Wanglin quickly set up a soul spin while sealing the Qilin's doppelganger with a prohibition, eventually putting it into the bell. Although the Qilin was suppressed, it still released a large amount of soul essence. Wanglin used the soul spin to absorb some of the souls and gradually weakened its power. He held a mirror streamer and summoned countless black lances to stab at the Qilin. Although the Qilin resisted with a golden mass of light, it was still pierced by some of the lances and its soul continued to scatter. The silhouette of the Qilin attracted Wanglin's chariot soul beast, which was in a weak state, but as soon as it saw the remnants of the Qilin's soul, it revealed its greed and took the initiative to attack. The two collided fiercely, and the griffin was sent flying, with a large number of souls being scattered and absorbed by the soul whirlwind again. The silhouette of the Qilin grew dimmer and dimmer, revealing itself to be outmatched. At the place where the Qilin was knocked back, Wanglin found a golden soul streamer. He quickly stepped forward to take down the soul streamer and completely control it by sacrificing his heart, soul, and blood. At this moment, the remnant soul of the Qilin attempted to counterattack, but was forced to retreat by the soul beast, and was eventually subdued by Wanglin with the soul streamer. And the main soul of the Qilin transformed into golden light and flew into the soul streamer to be completely sealed. However, the soul beast was furious because the Qilin was taken away, and turned to roar and attack Wanglin. Wanglin calmly responded by using the chains on the chariot to seal the soul beast again, and then put it into the beast repeller circle and sealed it completely before putting it into his storage bag. After completing this, Wanglin appeared at the top of Soul Refining Peak. At this time, the black gas in the sky above the peak caused the Soul Refining Sect's disciples to be shocked. Wanglin detected abnormalities, especially the 2 blood rings after the 9 gold rings, and vaguely he felt a vicissitude and kind gaze flash past from within the blood rings. He murmured in a low voice, "Interesting." Then he fell into deep thought.